So 10 years, 10,000 guests, and we now do this full time. But when I first got started, I got almost everything wrong. I thought I knew what I was doing. Well, I didn't. I thought that being a good host meant being available all the time. Well, it didn't. I thought that having a full-time calendar meant that I was winning. Well, it didn't. I thought that guests would just get it. Well, they didn't. So here are the 10 things that I got completely wrong in my first few years on Airbnb. The things that Airbnb doesn't tell you until it's too late, and really what I would do instead right now. Because if you're just starting out or maybe a few months in and things aren't working, I was you back then. So let me show you what I learned. And quick context, my partner and I have been hosting for almost a decade. We've built a 7-figure business that is thriving right now. We run multiple properties across 2 cities, and I coach other hosts across the country. Over the last 12 months, I've audited over 100 listings. So these aren't just my own mistakes. They're the same mistakes I see new hosts make each and every single day in running an Airbnb. So let's go and get into it. The first thing I got wrong is I thought being a good host meant answering every single message immediately, anytime or anywhere, because that is what hospitality means, right? So I'd answer messages at midnight, 6 a.m. on Saturday, in the middle of dinner even. And y'all, I thought I was crushing it. But here's what I didn't realize. Responding at random times trained guests to expect me at random times. And so they would message me at 2 a.m. and then get mad when I didn't reply until the next morning, even though I replied within a 6-hour window overnight. It took me almost 2 years to figure this out. Airbnb doesn't care if you reply in 5 minutes or 50 minutes. They care if you are consistent. So if you reply in 10 minutes on Monday through Friday and then 8 hours on Saturday, Airbnb sees that as unreliable. Not working harder, unreliable. So here's what I do now. Respond within 30 minutes during business hours, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then after 9 p.m., an automated message is sent out that says something like this. Thanks for reaching out. And I respond first thing in the morning, starting at 9 a.m. every single time. Now, there are some true emergencies that will require an instant response. And guests know what to expect. Airbnb sees this as consistent. And most of the times, y'all, I get pretty good sleep. Nice and simple. Now, on to the second thing. I thought that 100% occupancy was the goal. If my calendar was packed, I felt like I was winning. And so I would drop my price to fill the gap, accept one-night stays, take last-minute bookings from guests with no reviews. And my calendar looked perfect. That thing was filled to the brim, but I was exhausted in the process. So constant questions, constant issues, back-to-back turnovers. And the worst part is at the end of the month, when I looked at the numbers, I'd made less money than the month before when I was only 70% booked. And true confession, it took me way too long to realize this. 100% occupancy at low prices make you less money than 75% occupancy at the right price. That is because higher occupancy means more cleanings, more guest interactions, more wear and tear on your property, more problem guests. You are literally working twice as hard for less profit. And so now I aim for 75% to 85% occupancy, not 100%. So I charge more, have a 2-night minimum, and sometimes we'll block off some days to ensure that we're able to get maintenance done on the property. And yes, my calendar has some gaps, but I make more money, work less, and get better guests. And it turns out that an empty calendar day is much better than a $99 nightmare. All right, let's keep going. Let's move on to the third thing that I learned. And y'all, I thought that clean meant the same thing to everyone. It doesn't. When my partner and I first started out, we cleaned the property ourselves. We'd vacuum, wipe down the surfaces, change the sheets. I thought our place both looked and smelled nice and clean to me. And then I'd get the review saying, hey, that place was okay, but the bathroom had a hair in the corner. And to myself, I'm thinking, what hair? How could I have missed a hair in the corner? And sometimes I went back and checked and I didn't see anything, but the guests saw it. And that is the thing that matters. So here's what I learned. Clean to me after living in a property is not not the same as clean to a guest seeing it for the very first time. I had gotten used to the little things, but the guests hadn't. And the moment I figured this out, we just hired a professional cleaner and watched them go to work. They cleaned that place from top to bottom, the baseboard, light switches, door handles. And what I realized from this is guests in 2026, not my house is clean, they expect hotel grade clean. And so now we use a comprehensive checklist. And after every time our property gets cleaned, our cleaners will take a timestamp photo. Not because I don't trust my cleaner, but because sometimes guests will claim that something got damaged, or they may claim that something wasn't clean. And those photos have saved me thousands of dollars over the years. So get a checklist and take photos each and every time you turn over a guest at your property. Now let's move on to the fourth thing. And I thought that guests actually read your listing description. Well, they don't. So I'd write everything out. Third floor walk up, no elevator. Street facing, some noises on the weekends. Checkout time is at 11 a.m. Please start the dishwasher before leaving. And you might agree with me that that is crystal clear, right? So I'd get messages like, where's the elevator? It literally says no elevator in the first paragraph. What time is checkout? Well, it's in the description, in the house rules, in the automated messages I sent you just before you checked in. And I'm normally a pretty cool guy, but in getting those messages, sometimes I'd get a little frustrated. I'm thinking, why don't they just read the details that we said? So then I audited 100 listings last year, and then I realized most guests book based on photos, price, and location. They will skim the title, maybe, but they almost never read the full description. So if critical information is buried in paragraph 3, they're not going to see it. So here's what I do now. I put the most important stuff in the photo captions. Third floor walk up, no elevator, right under the steer photo. Street facing, some weekend noise, right on the window photo. That is because guests will look at the photos. So I make the photos tell them the information that they need to know before staying at one of our properties. And when we did this, the I didn't know messages dropped almost 80%. Y'all, if you felt that same frustration, I want to invite you to hit the subscribe button, because the rest of these are the ones that no one will tell you until you've learned them the hard way. And if you want that exact set of checklists we use for every one of our new listings, the one that covers everything that you need and all the things that you can ignore, well, that is free and you can grab it down below in the description. Let's keep moving on now to the fifth thing that we learned. And I thought that Airbnb's AirCover insurance would protect me if something went wrong. And I can tell y'all through countless experiences, it didn't. Because in our second year of hosting, we had a guest accidentally flood one of our bathrooms. Water damage to the floor below cost us around $4,200 in repairs. I filed a claim with Airbnb, submitted the photos, contractor estimates, everything that they asked for. Airbnb denied it because they said it was quote unquote wear and tear. Y'all, it was a flood, but they wouldn't cover it. And I was out $4,200. And that is when I learned that AirCover is not the same as having your own insurance. Real insurance would have covered this, but I didn't have real insurance because I thought Airbnb had me covered. They didn't. So now I have a dedicated short-term rental insurance. Covers property damage, liability, lost revenue if the property was ever uninhabitable due to some kind of damage. It costs about $1,200 a year per property, but it's worth every single penny of it. And now AirCover is our backup. It is not our primary protection. And y'all, don't make the same mistake that we did. Get real insurance from the beginning. Let's keep moving now to the sixth thing. So I thought I'd get better at hosting over time and the reviews would follow. Well, wrong. So I launched my first listing at market rate, figured I'd kind of learn as I went along. First booking, 4 stars, nice place, but a few issues. Second booking, 4 stars again, different issue, same rating. And by the time I'd figured out what I was doing wrong, my listing was buried on Airbnb. And Airbnb doesn't even show your star rating until you have 3 reviews. So for my first 3 bookings, guests were booking blind. And I didn't even give them a reason to take that risk. So here is what I learned. Your first 3 reviews are the most important reviews that you'll ever get because they set your rating. And once you get a 4.0 rating, it takes roughly 15 5-star reviews to get back to 4.8. 15, y'all. And most hosts will actually quit before that point. So now when I launch a new listing, I will price anywhere between 15 and 25% below market for the first few bookings. And once bookings start coming in and I have a solid reviews, I will raise the price back to market rate. And I'm trying to make it easy for our first guests to say yes to a property and impossible for them to leave anything less than a raving 5-star review. Extra amenities, a welcome basket, a personal note. You might lose a few $100s in week 1 and 2, but avoid months of climbing out from a dismal 4.0 star rating on Airbnb. All right, let's keep going. And the next thing I learned is I thought I could set one price for the year and be done with it. Terrible idea. And so initially we set our price at $135 a night. And then I'd watch other listings charge $220 during the peak season and $95 during the slow season. Meanwhile, I am stuck at $135 per night. And this rate was too expensive when demand was low, and it was too cheap when demand got much higher. I was literally leaving thousands of dollars on the table. And the moment I figured this out, I ran the numbers. Static pricing earned us $48,000 a year, whereas dynamic pricing earned us $68,000 a year. That is the same property for the same amount of work, but a $20,000 difference in earnings. So now we use dynamic pricing through Wheelhouse. There are other programs out there, and it adjusts our rates every day based on local demand, competitive pricing, events in the area, and the days of the week. I spend just about 10 minutes a month reviewing this, and it makes us an additional $20,000 per year on the same property. And so you don't need to obsess about price. You need a dynamic pricing software. Set it up and let it go to work, earning you additional revenue every month and every year. And the eighth thing I learned is I thought if I provided really nice amenities, guests would love it. Well, they hated it in some cases. And y'all, we thought we were being fancy. We bought one of those expensive espresso machines with the buttons all over the place. And when we installed this, we got messages saying, well, how does this work? It won't turn on. Where do you actually put the pods? And I would send them a YouTube video, but they still could not figure it out. And then I'd get the reviews. Coffee machine was too complicated. And that's when I learned. Guests don't want fancy. They want simple. They're tired. They're in an unfamiliar place. Fancy doesn't impress them. It actually leads to frustration. And so now we have one of those inexpensive Nespresso machines, one button, the pods are right next to it. Guests can figure it out in 5 seconds. And the reviews now say, hey, coffee was great. Not because it was better coffee, but because guests could actually use the machine. Simple beats fancy every single time. And the next thing I learned is that I thought if guests had a lot of questions before booking, it meant that they were serious. Well, it didn't. So I'd answered all those questions and they would eventually book, but those questions continued all throughout their stay. More questions, more requests, more expectations. And by the end, those guests were the ones that would leave 4-star reviews. And so here's what I've learned from running our own listing as well as auditing other listings across the country. The more questions that a guest asked before booking, the more likely they were to be a high maintenance guest. And so now if a guest asks more than 3 detailed questions for information that is already clearly presented on the listing, we will kind of quietly decline those listings. That's because one high maintenance guest can cost you more than that entire booking is worth. So protect your peace, y'all, in the process. All right, let's keep going. So in the beginning, when I first started hosting Airbnb, I thought I needed to meet and greet every single guest and personally kind of handed them the key and showed them around the property. And I was so wrong about this. I would block my entire afternoon. Guest arrives late every single time. I would sit there for hours, but guess what, y'all? That stopped the day that we installed smart locks. Unique code, automated messages, guests check in whenever they want, and they love it. The reviews say check-in was seamless, not because I was there, but because I wasn't. And now self-check-in is the standard. And if you're still doing kind of direct handoff to guests, you're working 10 times harder than what you actually need to. All right, so 10 years, 10,000 guests, this is what we now do full time. And I was wrong about almost everything. And if the information I'm sharing in this video has saved you from even making a single mistake, well, that's pretty good. And if you need that setup checklist, the one that covers all of this, go ahead and grab it in the description below. It is free. Now, here's the problem. You can do all 10 things on this list and your listing still end up getting buried because Airbnb is quietly tracking 7 things in the background. And that will decide whether whether or not you end up on page 1 of the platform or whether or not your listing disappears. And I break that down in this next video because when you pair what you've learned in this video with that one, you're going to be ahead of 90% of the other hosts in your market. I'll see you there.